Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. In today's video, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite movie opening scenes of all time. So, as the title suggests, these are my favorite opening scenes to movies. I tried to be unbiased with this list and not just pick opening scenes from some of my favorite movies. I tried to really look at just a huge list of films and choose ones that I actually thought had just a great intro that kind of tells you the tone of the movie, gets you right into it, hooks you on whatever it is that it's about. So that's how I created this list, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Coming in at number 10, we have The Shining. So The Shining is one of my personal favorite horror movies of all time. I've said this in the past. I think Stanley Kubrick is a great director, and this is my personal favorite film of his. I just absolutely love the setting and tone of this movie, and just the feel of it all. It's got this very eerie, lonely feel, because it follows a group of basically three characters who are stuck on this mountain inside of a really big hotel by themselves, and things just start going really, really weird. Jack Torrance goes insane and, well, eventually tries killing his family with an axe. And everything about this movie is great. It's a really well-shot film, but the opening scene has just always been one of my favorites of all time. It's just so well shot, and it just, like I said, it gives off the tone of the movie, because you have that great score in the background, which is just so eerie. It really just sets up the tone of this movie. The whole sound, eventually the layer it gets into the score, you start getting more instruments that kind of add this more spine-tingly feeling to it, and it's just a really good way to start off the movie. I love the helicopter shots, just following the car as it drives along the mountain. Really iconic opening, and that's why I made the number 10 spot on my list. Coming in at number 9, we have the original Toy Story released back in 1995. Now, Toy Story is just such an iconic film, one of the most iconic animated movies of all time. It was Pixar's very first feature-length film. People just absolutely love this movie. Ever since 1995, it's just been this huge sensation, and it really is what kicked off Pixar into what they are today. It was the first full-length, CGI, or whatever you want to call it, 3D animated movie, and I just love Toy Story. It's such a fun family film, and I also just think it has a great opening scene. And just like most films on this list, a lot of it just comes down to that memorable score by Randy Newman.
Come on, let's wrangle up the cattle.
When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice one.
The movie just starts off, you have those classic Toy Story clouds, painted on the wall. You have that music start up, you just see this kid playing with his toys, and it's just a really sweet opening, very fun film overall, and one of my favorite animated movies of all time. So there you go, Toy Story takes the number 9 spot on my list. Coming in at number 8, we have another horror entry, and that is going to be for 1978 Halloween, directed by John Carpenter. This is such an iconic opening. In my opinion, it is without a doubt the most iconic horror film opening of all time. I was thinking about, which one I like more between this and The Shining, but ultimately, it just came down to the actual scene itself, not just the score, because both scores are just so great, it was hard to choose. Obviously, with Halloween, you have that really great opening title sequence where you have the pumpkin, and the camera's just slowly moving in with that great score playing, but the actual scene, it just brings you into that movie so much, right? You have this opening scene where you're following Michael Myers. He's 6 years old. It's like a first-person view. He goes into his house and he murders his sister, comes outside. His parents are just standing there looking at him, and then the film just cuts to Halloween night, and then like whatever amount of years later it is. So just a really great opening. It just puts you right into things, and that's ultimately why I put it above Toy Story and especially The Shining, just because I felt like this was even more so of an intro that just really just tells you what this film is about. And just really eerie overall. I also think it was the first film to actually utilize the Steadicam technology, so there's also that going for it. But yeah, really cool opening and one of my favorites. Coming in at number 7, we have Jaws. Now, this is one of the most iconic openings of all time, and because of that, I had a hard time putting it this low on my list. But ultimately, I just thought there was more films that had, more memorable, or at least for me, longer or better written opening scenes. You'll see what I mean later on, but this still has a fantastic opening. I mean, you're following these characters on this beach who are just, smoking pot and drinking, whatever. These two people run off, one of them named Chrissy. They're gonna go skinny dipping in the water, and all of a sudden this shark just attacks out of nowhere. It has, that super iconic shot, the first person, or whatever you want to call it, view of the shark coming up, and then it bites her legs and she starts getting pulled around. And some people complain that this isn't a super accurate depiction of how a shark attack would occur, not, because it wouldn't be dragging her around and stuff, but still, it's really just terrifying opening, and it gets you right into what this film is about. And before that opening, you have the title sequence, obviously, where, again, you're getting first-person view from the shark, or first shark view, I guess you could say, swimming through the water, all the seaweed and stuff getting around the lens with that iconic John Williams score playing. So, really great opening, and that is why it makes it to number 7 on my list. Coming in at number 6, we have The Lion King. This is another classic animated film opening, The Circle of Life. A great score. The movie just opens up with that shot of the sun rising up. The day is beginning in Africa, and all these wildlife are just running around. The fantastic score is playing, and of course it ends up going over to Pride Rock, where you see Simba being lifted up. The new king is born, and it's just such a classic opening. I mean, the music just gets you right in the feels, and it's just, not necessarily that's gonna make you sad or anything, but it just gets you into this joyous mood watching this great animated film. I mean, it's honestly the most classic Disney film in a lot of people's opinion, including myself. I just think it's such a great movie, and I love this opening so much. The animation, everything, it's a classic opening, and that's why it makes it to number 6 on my list. Coming in at number 5, we have Inglorious Bastards. Now this, without a doubt, out of all the entries on this list, is the best written opening scene of all time. This is just such an incredible scene. It is longer. I don't know the exact length of the scene, but I imagine it's close to 12 minutes or so. It starts off in Nazi-occupied France, where you have this man, I believe his name was Jacques maybe, chopping wood. His daughter comes out and tells him that the Nazis are coming, so he tells him to go inside, he washes up, and then you just have this really long but incredible written conversation between him and Hans Landa, aka the Jew Hunter, who is at their house because he heard news of them possibly sheltering Jewish people. So the scene's just going on for so long. It's so well written. It's also pretty comedic at sometimes. Not that it overshadows the overall tone of the scene, but just moments where he asks if he can pull out his pipe, and then he just whips out this giant ass pipe. There's just things like that that I thought were kind of interesting, kind of showing you just how, I guess in a way, kind of in a comedic way, but showing you how large and overpowering the Nazis were during World War II in Europe. So just a really great opening. The dialogue's obviously fantastic. Him talking about the rat, and if it walked into your house, if he would treat it with a delicious glass of his warm milk. Just all of these things. And then obviously it just ends with everybody being shot up in the basement, and it's just a really awesome opening that definitely just proves how great of a writer Quentin Tarantino is, as the movie just starts off with such a bang. So that is why the scene takes my number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have my personal most nostalgic opening of any movie ever, and that is for Toy Story 2. Now, I initially was going to actually have this at number 1 on my list, but I decided to lower it because it's not technically my favorite opening anymore. I just have a lot of love for this opening scene, such a classic opening in my opinion. When I was little, this always just grabbed my attention. I always just thought it was such an awesome scene. Just, everything about it. You have, just the stars as the backdrop, and then the Toy Story 2 title comes in. The music's great, then you have Buzz Lightyear coming in, and everything about this scene is just so great. I have every single sound effect and every single part of that theme just embedded in my mind, because I probably rewatched this opening every day when I was little. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've been told in my family that I watched Finding Nemo every single day. That is my favorite animated movie, so it really wouldn't surprise me if I watched Toy Story 2's opening as much as I did Finding Nemo. I mean, it's just such a great opening scene. I always loved the just Star Wars-y feel to it, right? They even have the Darth Vader breathing sound effects when Buzz lands. Everything. It's just such an awesome scene. So great opening. The music especially is what really pulls me into it, as is for a lot of the films on this list. But yeah, it's truly a fantastic opening. Coming in at number 3 is a scene that tends to be number 1 on a lot of lists, and that is the opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, this is without a doubt one of, if not the best character introductions of all time, in my opinion. The very first time we get to see Indiana Jones played by Harrison Ford. And this is definitely a longer opening compared to some of the other entries on this list, probably similar in length to the likes of Inglorious Bastards, but just what a damn good scene. I mean, it just gets you into this adventurous the adventurous feel that this movie has. Everything about it is so great. The score, the way it's shot, just the look of the set design. The place just looks so damn cool. All the booby traps and stuff, you know, like the darts that shoot out when you step on the wrong panel. The awesome lighting when Indy grabs the idol and it just glows onto his face and he swaps it out for the sand. The iconic boulder chase. Indy getting onto the plane while he's being chased by all the native people, and then of course just the snake, everything. Like, it's just such a classic opening. What a great character introduction, and one of my favorite opening scenes of all time. Again, it makes it to a lot of number 1 spots on a lot of lists. Just didn't make it to it on mine, but still a fantastic opening. Coming in at number 2, we have the opening scene for the original Star Wars. Now, this is a shorter scene. It's more so just a specific moment of this scene that I love, but it's just the first shot of just the Tantive 4, you know, flying towards Tatooine, and then this giant Star Destroyer comes up from behind the Tantive 4, and the shot just goes on forever and ever. I mean, this ship just keeps on going and going. You realize the scale. It basically tells you everything you need to know about the Rebels versus the Empire. You know, the Rebels have this smaller ship that's being pursued by this giant ship that just goes on and on forever, this overpowering ship. And like I said, it perfectly describes, without any dialogue, just visually describes the dynamic between these two different factions. And I just think it's such a iconic opening. Obviously, the John Williams score, take a shot every single time I mention John Williams in this list, but yeah, it's just such a really, really damn good opening scene. And obviously then you also have Darth Vader's introduction when he walks in next to all the stormtroopers, the smoke and steam behind him, and he enters into the scene. It's so great. I love it so much, and that is why it's my number 2. Coming in at number 1. Now, this is kind of cheating in some ways, but it's kind of 2 films. I didn't want to have any, you know, sequels on this list, or not necessarily I didn't want to have sequels, but I didn't want to have 2 or so films from one series. I did do that with Toy Story, but I don't know, I felt like they were different enough openings. For my number 1, though, we have the opening scenes of The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I think both of these are just the best introductions for villains in any film. I mean, if I had to choose one of these as the better scene, I would probably go with The Dark Knight, just because overall I like The Dark Knight more, I suppose. But I still think Dark Knight Rises just has a badass opening. I mean, it's probably bigger, honestly, in scale, because you have just the huge plane come in, and that awesome shot where the other plane's being pulled. So there's a lot of great things about both of these openings, but where I think The Dark Knight honestly wins for me is just with the tone, because, you know, you're coming off of Batman Begins, which was really dark and very, you know, like visually specific about how it was, you know, especially just compared to previous Batman films. It just had this certain like crimey, slimy feel to it. I don't really know how to explain that. But yeah, The Dark Knight just has this great opening where it's just throwing you right into the villain's introduction. Whereas Batman Begins, you know, was starting off by introducing Bruce Wayne, kind of telling his story. This film just introduces Joker, and even though we don't know any of Joker's backstory in this film, this tells you everything you need to know about him. Just backstabbing all of his men. Just, you know, having them all get killed off one by one, and just the dialogue in the scene is so great as well. There's not a ton of it, but you just have these great lines where the character is like, funny, he told me something similar, and then he shoots the guy when the guy's standing against the bus, or standing back to the back of the bank, and he's like, bus driver? What bus driver? And then the bus comes and hits the guy. The other guy who says, what happened to the rest of the guys, and then Joker shoots him, and it's just such an iconic scene, and honestly, I would say that the masks they wear, especially the one that Joker wears, is as iconic as his actual appearance in that movie. At least to me it is. I just think it's such a memorable mask, and all those guys look so cool. And then obviously Heath Ledger takes off the mask, reveals himself in the Joker makeup with his great first line of the movie, or one of his first lines, I think. And then, yeah, that's the opening scene. I mean, it's just such a great way to start off this movie. And on the other hand, you have The Dark Knight Rises, which I think is also fantastic. It's just such a good introduction for Bane. You have that whole part where the plane's just pulling the other one apart. I mean, it's all shot amazingly because the thing with Nolan is he goes for practicality over, anything else. So, while technically speaking, yes, a plane would not be able to pull another plane without going down. So that part of it was technically fake. They still did so much of that practically. They still had guys come down on the wires, and it's just so incredible, like, watching the behind the scenes for these kind of things and seeing how Nolan did it. Because again, like, when the car explodes in Batman Begins and you have all of the cards flying everywhere, they actually filmed that. When you have the giant truck flipping, they filmed that. He just does so much of this stuff in real time, and that's what makes it seem so real, is because, well, it is. So, both great openings, both fantastic ways to introduce their characters, and all 10 of these openings, or I guess 11 technically, are fantastic in my opinion. It was really, cool to make this list, just looking at all these movies that I think have such fantastic openings. I'll see you guys next time, where I'll be talking about my top 10 favorite movie endings. That should be a pretty interesting list. You're going to see some films that were on this list make an appearance on that one, but until then, I will see you guys next time. I am Mr. DVB, and I really don't have an outro. Bye.